What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Badgers. Fun show today. We're going to talk about Nebraska, preview it, keys of the game, and then we're going to get into something that I've been trying to figure out in my head for a while. What's the better opening job right now? Is it Nebraska or Wisconsin? Like, which is the more desirable for a coach? So we're going to get into all that on today's Locked On Badgers plus more. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what is going on, my friends? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. Here to continue to build up this Badger community, talk Badger sports. Appreciate everybody tuning in, as I always do. And let's get into it. Big game this weekend, Wisconsin heading to Nebraska to play a road game. Wisconsin has not been good on the road this year, to say the least. So, and in some games, they haven't been good at home either. But so they're heading out to Nebraska. Nebraska is just playing for pride at this point. They are not going to go bowling, barring some type of mass cancellation of games. And if they win their last two, maybe they get in as that random 5-win team that gets in because the bowls can't fill all their slots. We know Nebraska fans travel, but yeah, they're pretty much just playing for pride. All right, so snapshot Nebraska, right? Nebraska, very similar kind of season to Wisconsin in a lot of ways, right? Fired their head coach, Scott Frost, got fired after just a humiliating home loss to Georgia Southern, 45-42. That was the end of the Frost era. Nebraska took the poison pill. They didn't draw it out. They're going to pay him a big payout and said, just go greener pastures, get out of here. So Mickey Joseph has been the interim coach. Nebraska had some new coach energy with him, but they've lost 4 in a row. They got waxed last week against Michigan. Now, Michigan's really good, obviously, but they also lost 2013 to Minnesota. They lost to Purdue. They lost, I think, to Illinois in that stretch. So the wheels have kind of come off Nebraska. There was a period where people thought, Mickey could potentially be the next head coach, but that's not happening right now. That ship has sailed. The team would have really had to rebound it underneath him. Matt Rule, a guy that we've talked about on this show for Wisconsin potentially, looks to be at the top of the list for Nebraska. Former Baylor coach, former Panthers coach, pretty respected guy at the college level. I think that would be a pretty good, hire for them. But that's kind of where Nebraska's at, 3-7. Wisconsin still needs one more win to get bowl eligible, and this is the easier of the two, right? Wisconsin is a 13-point favorite going to Nebraska. Now, a lot of that, let's get into some of the game here. A lot of that is based on injury issues at Nebraska, specifically at the quarterback spot. Okay, so Casey Thompson, their transfer quarterback, came in from Texas, started out the season pretty well. He injured a nerve in his throwing arm. He's been out for a couple games. They didn't think initially that he would play this game, and now it sounds like he's practicing. He's throwing the ball a little bit. He's going to be day-to-day. That changes things tremendously for this game if he is healthy. And listen, there's a difference between playing and being healthy enough to be effective, right? Just because he's practicing and he might get out to the Nebraska game and play this weekend, he might not be healthy enough to be effective anyway. Mickey Joseph said he's going to monitor how the ball comes out of Casey's hand this week to see how he throws. That shifts the entire paradigm. The reason Wisconsin, with all their foibles, with all their inconsistency on offense, with their own coaching transition, is going on the road. And the reason they're a 13-point favorite against the Huskers is because Casey Thompson's been hurt. Their backup, Chuba Hubbard, is hurt, out for the year after hurting his ankle. So they're down to their third-string quarterback, Logan Smothers, who's also a little dinged up, right? So if Thompson is suddenly playing, that's a big shift. And if he's healthy and effective enough to play, that's a big shift. He's not a game breaker. He's not an incredible talent, but he is a solid quarterback. He's mobile. Doesn't have a giant arm, but he is athletic, quick. He has 12 touchdowns, 10 interceptions on the year. So again, nothing game breaking, but he gives them a playmaker at that spot, and he gives them somebody that can hurt Wisconsin with his arms and his legs. So that's really the big thing to look for here, because the rest of their offense isn't good. Their offense has been basically non-existent the last couple of weeks without Thompson. They haven't been able to run the ball. They haven't really been able to throw the ball. They just have nothing, right? So if Thompson isn't playing, this is almost certainly a really bad Nebraska offense that Wisconsin is not going to have a lot of issues with. If Thompson is playing, it evens out a little bit. Some of the keys to the game, for Wisconsin, it just comes down to, again, the same thing we talked about with Iowa, right? No turnovers, no silliness. And can they get out of their own way? Because when Wisconsin can do that, they're fine. Like they're that's such a tepid compliment, right? They're fine, but they're fine. When they can do that, they're fine. We saw against Iowa, they couldn't do that. And despite what some Iowa fans jumping into my timeline had to say about Iowa forced all those Wisconsin mistakes, no, you can miss me with that pitch because it's not a strike. Iowa did not force all those Wisconsin mistakes. Wisconsin had a punt blocked, and they threw a pick six on a horrendously late and behind throw by Graham Mertz. That was not Iowa. That was Wisconsin being what we've seen from Wisconsin for a couple of years. Wisconsin is undefeated this year when they don't throw a pick. Undefeated the last couple of years, I believe, when they don't throw the pick. They have the fourth best winning percentage among Power 5 teams when they don't throw an interception, right? It just goes back to that. They're not good enough to overcome mistakes, but when they play clean football, they're really good. They're better than most teams when they play clean football. And the stats back that up. And they're going up against a team that doesn't excel at creating those turnovers. Nebraska has no interceptions and 17 touchdown passes allowed since last season. No one in the red zone. No interceptions and 17 touchdown passes allowed. That's tied for worst among Power 5 teams. So this is not a defense that excels at ripping the ball away or forcing a ton of turnovers. So take care of the ball, Graham. Special teams, take care of the ball. The other thing I would say, the key to the game for me is you have to throw early enough to get Graham in rhythm. And I think that's one of the things that Mertz needs. Like Mertz, you got to get him in some rhythm, get him some easy throws. And then that also keeps the defense off balance. It allows Wisconsin to kind of do what they want and dictate where they go. If you get into this run, pass philosophy, this lack of play action, this we're just going to, again, Bobby Ingram's done this a couple times where it feels like Paul Chryst is almost calling plays again. You have to throw early. You have to establish a little bit of rhythm for Mertz and then play the run game off of that. You don't have to throw a ton. You can throw 20 times, but if those 20 throws are, timed out a little better and schemed up a little better, that's fine. Like, you just have to be a little more on balance and unpredictable. And this speaks to right here. Wisconsin receivers have averaged 8.2 receptions per game since last season. That's the worst among Power 5 teams. It's like we're running the triple option sometimes, and we have weapons on the outside. Let's use them these last couple games. And if you're Bobby Ingram, what do you have to lose? What do you have to lose? Like we talked about, you're kind of auditioning for your job here. Go out and show it. Go out and show something creative and unique and get this offense on track because you have some weapons on the outside. Again, like your receivers are averaging the least amount of receptions going back to last year among all Power 5 teams. That's crazy. We're not Georgia Tech from a couple years ago trying to run a triple option. Like, we're a real grown-up Big Ten team, right? Like, so I want to see some passing, just a little bit of creativity. Let's see it, Bobby, because again, you have nothing to lose. You're auditioning for your job. Go out there and make something happen, and then just get out of your own way. None of the turnovers, the silly things that are correctable. And I think you're going to take care of this game. Again, the line is -13. I'm going to take Nebraska to cover this, especially if Casey plays. I'm going to take the under, which is around 40. I'm going to take Nebraska to cover. Wisconsin wins maybe like 17-10, 20-10. I'm going to take the under. Nebraska covers. I think Wisconsin wins. Even if Casey plays, chances are he's not going to be 100%. So I expect Wisconsin to kind of tee off. Nebraska doesn't get a lot of pass rush. They have Garrett Nelson up front with 5.5 sacks, but aside from that, they're 11th or 10th in the conference in sacks, and they also give up a lot of pressure. They're 11th in sacks allowed. So a Wisconsin defensive line and pass rush that's really been coming alive the last several weeks, I think, can feast, especially if you have a limited quarterback in Casey Thompson, or especially if Casey Thompson can't play and they're down to the third stringer in Logan Smothers. So I expect a Wisconsin win. I expect Wisconsin to get bowl eligible after this weekend. I do not expect it to be a Picasso of a football game, right? The people watching are going to be Nebraska and Wisconsin fans, and we are watching it because we are Nebraska and Wisconsin fans. We are not watching it to see incredible football. But yeah, I'm excited for it. I'm excited for every weekend always. I think Wisconsin wins. Nebraska covers. We get bowl eligible, and I'm going to do a future show on that, but I think that's a big deal. I had a great question from Tom Nesis on how much I think it matters. I want to dedicate a whole segment to that, but that's going to be on a future show. Coming up next, I want to talk about something that's been rattling around in my brain a lot. What is the better head coaching vacancy? Is it Nebraska or Wisconsin? What is more attractive? I have thoughts both ways. We're going to get into that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, today's show is brought to you by our friends at Nugenics. Getting older changes your body. I'm getting close to my 40s now. I actually just demolished a part of our barn, and I feel it. Like I feel it in ways I wouldn't have felt it when I was 25, right? You get a little bit of that dad bod feeling, a little less like your old self. You don't have as much time to work out, but you want to. You want it, but you just lack a little bit of the energy. Nugenics is one of the best ways that you can feel revived and get back to where you want to get. And it's not your fault. As men age, we naturally lose testosterone, the man hormone. It happens to every man, and it makes it more difficult to stay in shape and be energetic. Winning used to feel a little easier. This is a way to get back to it. So what this is, Nugenics, if you want more energy, you want to counter the negative physical effects of aging, Nugenics Total Testosterone Booster with Testofen will help you turn back the clock, re-energize your workouts, get you better results at the gym, and help you feel like the man you really want to be. It contains man-boosting ingredients like testofen, which has been validated in 5 clinical studies to boost your free testosterone levels, to help you feel better, more energy, get better at the workouts, and just feel more like your younger self. It can help re-energize your life and get you back to the powerful, confident, good-looking warrior you used to be. Now, with being a friend of Locked On Badgers, get a free complimentary bottle of Nugenics Total T when you text college to 231-TAC231. Text now, get a free bottle, Nugenics Thermo, their most powerful fat incinerator ever, with key ingredients to help you get back in shape fast, absolutely free. Text college to 231-231. Text college to 231-231. Texting enrolls you in reoccurring automated messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates apply. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Locked On Badgers. When you're done here, go check out Locked On Sports Today. All the biggest sports news and stories of the day on the Locked On Sports Network, wherever you get your podcast, Audacity, on YouTube. All right, let's get into it. Again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. This one's interesting, and I want your comments on this. I want your feedback on this. What's a better head coaching job? If you are a head coach free agent, right, and you can pick, are you going to Omaha, Nebraska, or are you going Lincoln, Nebraska, I should say, or are you going to Madison, Wisconsin? Do you want the Motion W or do you want the Block N? Right? Do you want Memorial? Do you want Camp Randall? Do you want jump arounds, or do you want 99 red balloons? I think it's close. And I put it in the Discord. I'm waiting to get more feedback on it. I'm going to start off by saying I'm not saying this to try to roil anybody up or create any type of trolling issue where I'm ticking off my own fan base. I think it's Nebraska. I think it's close. Okay. I really, really do think both of these jobs are highly, highly desirable. I think Nebraska's the better job. And let's get into it. Let's start with why I think Wisconsin has a leg up. And then I want to get into why I don't think it matters quite as much and why Nebraska, I think, has the trump card. I think where Wisconsin, obviously the recent success matters, right? For 20, 25 years, Wisconsin is not 25 years, but really for the last 20-ish years, Wisconsin's been the better program, right? They have demonstrated a level of sustained success that almost no teams outside of a few blue bloods have done in college football. So the blueprint's there. It's, I think, pretty easy for a coach to walk in. There's not as much of a reno job. This is like more of a, maybe you take it down to the studs, put some new stuff up, repaint it. It's ready to go, but the bones are good. I think in Nebraska, a lot of the bones are bad. Like when you lose and you're this inconsistent and this dysfunctional and you roll through this many coaches and athletic directors and transfer players, and it's just, I think that thing needs a total rebuild, right? I don't think there's depth in the program. I don't think they know who they want to be. I don't think they've been recruiting the right types of kids, so from that standpoint, I think Wisconsin's easier to step into and kind of get it turned around. I think the other thing with Wisconsin is the recruiting in-state favors Wisconsin a little bit over Nebraska. I mean, neither state produces a ton of in-state talent, but Wisconsin produces more than Nebraska on average. If you go back and look, they produce a few more high-level guys. And the walk-on program at Wisconsin, the players are able to get in-state, favors Wisconsin. So I think they have a little better recruiting base that they can consistently rely on than Nebraska. But I don't think any of that matters as much in 2022 going forward, right? As NIL, as money, as program support, as facilities, and in all those areas, Nebraska trumps Wisconsin. They just do. And until Wisconsin can now maybe you can point to that, maybe you can spin that, right, as saying, well, when Wisconsin gets that stuff unlocked, plus all the other stuff we just talked about, their ceiling's going to be higher. But we don't know if Wisconsin's going to get that stuff unlocked, right? The varsity collective, Wisconsin was really late on the NIL front because Wisconsin's kind of methodical, like a little slower in adapting to these things anyway. And now you look, Wisconsin has the varsity collective, which is imperative. Nebraska has 5 collectives. I don't know if people are following this stuff. You can go to ON3, which is a recruiting website. Nebraska has 5 collectives. Okay, Wisconsin has 1, and I'm not going to be able to speak to the efficiency and the effectiveness of each individual collective. You know, if you have one mega collective, vice 5 at moderately sized, maybe there's differences. But I think if you just look from the surface, and this school's got 5 different collectives, they've been operating longer than the varsity collective versus just the varsity collective. Yeah, one of these schools is a lot more serious about it. And it's not the schools really, right? One of these alumni bases and fan bases and group of former players and local businessmen are just more serious about it in Nebraska. And that'll never change, right? Wisconsin, there's a lot more. There's the Packers and the Brewers and the Bucks. There's a lot more things. Nebraska, the Huskers are kind of a one-stop shop. They're the center ring of that circus. And in Wisconsin, the Badgers just aren't. I don't even know how you would fix that, right? Now, I do think some of this, the university needs to make a more proactive approach for sure, because I'm going to get into it. There's other schools with more collectives than Wisconsin too that aren't the only show in town. But listen to some of these. So these are the Huskers collectives, right? The Big Red Fan Club, the Lincoln NIL Club, which supports 90 plus Nebraska football players already. The N100 Club, listen to this. The N100 Club has already secured payments of more than $2 million to more than 100 student athletes across 5 sports. And it raised more than $5 million for NIL related activities already. Listen to those numbers. And this is just one of their collectives, right? This is interesting too. The N100 Club is rolling out an initiative focusing on Nebraska's walk-on program. It will allow for the direct support of walk-on student athletes. The N100 expects it to solidify Nebraska's place as the best walk-on program in the country. Shot across the bow to Wisconsin there, right? Because they haven't been the best walk-on program. But if they're going to start really pouring incentives into that as well, then you also have the 1890 Collective, which Trev Albert says, we expect this to give our young men and women another opportunity in the NIL world. I highlighted that comment right there. Another opportunity in the NIL world. Like Trev Alberts, he has 4 or 5 collectives he can ping across to help support Nebraska athletics. So he's saying, yeah, this one right here, it's going to give us another opportunity. Whereas if you're Wisconsin, it's like, we have one opportunity. I hope it's working, and this just speaks to why I think Nebraska's the better job right now. They have a ton more money and support. That matters. ON3, I referenced them already. They're a recruiting website. They mentioned already last year how Nebraska's NIL helped them outbid a bunch of programs for transfers coming in. Like they are aggressive with this. They're at the forefront of it, and they have more money. They have another one called the Big Red Collective. So that's their 5 that they have active right now. Listen to this too. Other Big Ten collectives, right? So I mentioned Nebraska has 5, and y'all might think that's a crazy outlier. And it is a little bit. But Ohio State has 3. Penn State has 3. Purdue has 3 different collectives. Indiana has 3. Iowa has 2. Maryland has 2. Minnesota has 3. Right? They have the Dinkytown Collective, our Dinkytown athletes. They have another player focus group, and they have another one. I forget what their 3 are. Again, if you just compare and contrast this to Wisconsin, it's tough if you're trying to really compare jobs and say Wisconsin's better. There's so much going forward, guys, is going to be NIL. It's going to be getting players in. It's going to be supporting players. It's going to be keeping players from being poached, right? And again, I'm not here to say these collectives are working more efficiently, because I'm not privy, obviously, to the inner workings of it. But it definitely looks like Wisconsin is pretty far behind in this race when you just compare what other programs are doing to what Wisconsin's doing. And then you look at facilities, and once again, now, thankfully, Wisconsin is pumping $300 million into a new indoor practice facility. They're really getting ready to kind of step that area up. But that's an area, again, where Nebraska has always been better. And Nebraska is better than most programs in the country, by the way, for facilities. But again, if we're comparing these 2 programs, right, you have historical success at Wisconsin, an administration that's more willing to dump money in, much stronger NIL programs, better facilities, better fan support. And listen, I'm a Wisconsin fan. I let myself into that too. Like, our Nebraska's fans are lunatics. Okay, that's not even as much a shot across Wisconsin's bow as it is their fans are friggin' lunatics, right? They've sold out every game since the Constitution was written. It's like ridiculous. So you start checking these boxes and stacking it up, and the abacus starts to weigh towards the Huskers. Now, I don't think it's a slam dunk, right? I think there's areas, if Wisconsin could really step it up and unlock some parts of Wisconsin, the administration and the floodgates, maybe you could argue Wisconsin's been doing all this and they've been throttled, right? So the ceiling maybe is higher at Wisconsin because Nebraska's been pumping all this money in, has all this support, and they haven't been able to find their footing. So maybe the ceiling's a little higher at Nebraska. I don't know. But if you had to ask me right now, which is more desirable for an impartial head coach, I would say Nebraska because they have more support, right? So yeah, let me know what you think. I'm very curious to see if I'm off base on this again. I don't think it's a slam dunk either way. I think they're close. I think they're both incredible jobs. They're in the Big Ten, awash with money. They're both upper tier Big Ten jobs in one of the two best conferences in the world. So they're incredible jobs, but curious what you guys think. I think it's Nebraska, but I'll definitely take your input, and maybe I'm wrong. Coming up next, I want to talk about 4 Badgers that I really want to see step up for the rest of the year for the next 2 games. People I need to either see play a little better or establish themselves for the upcoming year. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. But first, today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for sports betting information, stats, news, analysis. Get the latest odds, trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball, soccer, golf, esports, UFC, live casino games. It's all at BetOnline. Our friends at BetOnline. Live in-game betting plus futures betting. It is the number one source for all your sports betting needs. Do it responsibly, obviously, but a great place to have fun with lines and upcoming events. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those on BetOnline as well. The easiest and fastest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. I want to thank everybody again for tuning in this show. If you like it, please hit that subscribe button. It really does help support the show. Hit the like button and leave a comment. Let me know why is Wisconsin a better job than Nebraska? Or did I nail it? Probably didn't nail it, but let me know. All right. 4 football players I want to see either kind of step up or solidify themselves. I think the first one's obvious. All right, it's Mertz. It's Graham Mertz. And the problem, and I've been more of a Mertz defender than probably just about anybody on this show. Even in a lot of the comments, I see comments hoping he transfers or being really frustrated. Mertz overall is having a pretty solid season, right? He's drastically improved his touchdown to interception ratio. He's had some really nice games. But the problem is he's been just so inconsistent. There's way too much boom or bust right now with Graham Mertz. There'll be some really good games, and then he'll have like the Iowa game where it's just the wheels fall off. And we have to find more of that middle ground, right? Because you can't have a quarterback who's running that hot or cold. So the next 2 games, can Mertz go on the road, Nebraska, play clean, get Wisconsin Bowl eligible, and then go home and win the Axe, right? And play well in both of them. Because if you do, you start to maybe establish yourself as the guy next year, right? Whereas if you really struggle these next 2 games, I think if Mertz comes back, he's the guy anyway. But how you play these next 2 games, I think really is going to dictate where the coaching staff goes this offseason. If they are desperate to bring in someone that can compete with him, or if they're just trying to rebuild the depth at the position. So 2 games left in the Big Ten. Big ones, right? A road game against Nebraska to get bowl eligible, and then you got the biggie against Minnesota. How are you going to play? Can you be more consistent? Can you really solidify yourself going into next season potentially? Rodis Johnson's another one. Keanu Benton leaves next year, and this defensive line to me has a lot of questions. Rodis Johnson's been playing better the last 2 weeks. He had a tackle and a half for loss against Iowa, another tackle for loss against Purdue. I would like to see him continue to step up and be disruptive, like really establish himself as maybe the dude going into next year, the next year's defense line, where maybe you can have a Henningsen type year, something where he's the next guy to carry that torch on the front 7. So I'm going to be interested in seeing that continued growth from him over the next 2 games. I really want to see this safety rotation. How is this going to shake out? Hunter Wohler's back, Kamoe Latu, Torchio's in there. What I'm really interested in seeing, because obviously Torchio's gone next year, and he's really been the coverage guy at this group, where it's allowed Kamoe and Wohler, now that he's getting back, to fly a little bit more around the field. Can Kamoy Latu and Wooler play together? Is there a deep safety in that group? Are they both better near the line of scrimmage? Are they both better as physical run defenders who can cover a tight end? I would like to see how they play the next 2 games together potentially. Now, obviously, Torch is still in the rotation, as he should be, because he's been a stud this year. But how do those 2 players finish out the year? Do they set up next year as our 2 starting safeties? I'm a little worried there's not enough coverage there, but I'm curious. I'm curious to see how they play. And the last one is Trey Wettig, who really struggled at right guard against Iowa. Now, Iowa's really good. Their defense line is fantastic, but my hunch is he's playing there because he's really talented at right guard. But my hunch is that he's also a better tackle than he is a guard, and he's playing because we haven't recruited enough interior guys. So can he establish himself at a guard position which allows us next year to potentially keep Nelson and Malman at the tackles? Or is Wettig going to get kind of lost in this overabundance of talented young tackles, which also includes young Rucci? So I'm interested to see how he plays the next couple games, where they find spots for him if he continues at guard. He's a very talented dude. But if you can't play guard and you're looking at Malman, Rucci, Nelson ahead of him, I don't know. It might be a couple years for him. We'll see. It's too early to make any predictions on who might transfer, who might leave, who might stick it out. But there is a logjam at tackle if none of these guys can successfully transfer over to guard. So I'm interested in seeing that as well. And with that, we're going to have another show tomorrow. Probably touch more on Nebraska. I want your comments on what the better job is, Nebraska or Wisconsin. I'm super curious about that. As always, I'm super appreciative of everybody tuning in. Listen to the show. We're going to have a bunch more Badger content coming up this week on Wisconsin. And we'll talk to you tomorrow.